What's up, guys? Ryan here, and today I wanted to talk about one of the many paperback books in my collection. And that book today is a Western called The Death Riders by Jackson Cole. So, this here is one of hundreds of Western paperbacks that were given to me by a friend, mailed me two big boxes full of just these old used paperbacks, all belonging to the same fellow, I believe. And I haven't read any of them, but I have a feeling there's a lot of. I think this is probably just some treasure trove that I've had collecting dust that I really thought would be cool to break out and talk about. And today I thought I would do a little reading for you guys. So, what I'm going to do is briefly talk about this book and then read the first chapter for you guys. I haven't read anything from this. I've never looked in here, so this is going to be just as new to me as it is to you. We'll see how it goes. I haven't rehearsed this reading. I may mispronounce some words, but we're just going to go with it. So, this has a classic, what it looks like an oil painting cover, and I love these old painted covers. These were really popular back in the day. And this is from a character named Jim Hatfield, a Texas Ranger, who I guess was a really popular character back in the day. This book was published in 1952 by Pyramid Books, I believe. We'll just open this up and take a look here. Pyramid Books, 1952. So I'll read the back to you real quick, guys. Hell was bustin' loose in Texas. For months, the range country had smoldered with hate. Ranches had been set afire, cows rustled, blood spilled, and no one knew the identity of the night raiding killers. No one knew because they had no faces, only grinning skull bones where human flesh should be. Into this fear-crazed land came Texas Ranger Jim Hatfield, ignoring the murderous warning that the Death Riders handed him. There was a moment of terrible calm while the forces of violence gathered. Then, like an erupting volcano, trouble exploded. Gun trouble, shooting trouble, killing trouble. I don't know about you guys, but this sounds pretty good already, and I haven't even opened it yet. So, without further ado, we're just going to open this up and get into the first chapter and see what we have. It isn't very long, so shouldn't take us too long here. All right, guys. So here it is. Chapter 1, The Lone Wolf. A red moon hung over the Rio Grande. In its baleful rays, the great river was a stream of sluggish blood flowing between the banks of jet. Far to the northwest, the Guadalupes loomed massively against a blue-black sky, silver-spangled with stars, a mighty fortress of the half-gods built to withstand the assaults of titans in the days when there were giants in the land and the half-gods made war on them. Nearer, to the west, were jagged broken hills standing northeastward and fanging war to the south, slashing the desert with their iron claws. East and west stretched the desert, a purple mystery flecked with silver ash, whispering and murmuring in the wind as sand particle nestled against sand particle, or caressed the weird spires of chimney rocks and buttes with tireless finger, carving the iron-hard granite into the grotesque shapes and patterns. Cholla cactuses stood gaunt and menacing, brandishing twisted, deformed arms like truculent devils. Mesquite thickets, greasewood, sage, with here and there a grove of cottonwoods where a spring welled forth with the thirsty sands and fed a little stream that soon lost itself in the reaches of parched desolation. Edging the gray garment of the desert with emerald and amethyst was the rangeland, stretching north beyond the skyline like the waves of a sea, frozen at the crest of their swell. And above all, the vast inverted bowl of the sky with its countless stars and a red, red moon looking down with a bloody eye. Faint with distance sounded the mournful, beautiful plaint of a hunting wolf. A weird, whickering cry answered the call from where an owl perched on the topmost limb of a blasted pine. Then for a long time the sharp edge of the silence was blunted only by the eerie whisper of the wind-drifted sands. Gradually another sound became apparent, a muffled, rhythmic clicking that steadily increased in volume. It swelled to a systematic patter, a monotonous thudding, pouring along the gray ribbon of a trail that writhed out of the east, flanked by mesquite and chimney rock, with the ash and purple vastness of the desert to the south and the distant swell of the rangeland on the north. Around a bend in the moon-drenched trail flickered shadows. They resolved into mounted men, a full dozen or more of them, who swept eastward, riding with loose rein, glancing neither right nor left. Hat brims drawn low, faces muffled in handkerchiefs loomed high about their throats. The ghastly horsemen bulged past a shoulder of chimney rock and vanished around a second bend, perhaps 500 yards distant from where they had burst into view. The thudding died to a patter, a clicking, a whisper scarce louder than that of the sands, and ceased. Again the silence was unbroken, but not for long. A clicking different from the multiple beat of more than 20 hoofs vibrated the air. Like the first, it grew in volume, but at a slower rate. Another moment and a lone rider appeared, looming gigantic in the deceptive light that shimmered to reddish bronze the coat of the magnificent golden sorrel he bestrode. Lounging easily in the saddle, he rode past the bulge of chimney rock and towards the second bend in the trail. But unlike the speeding group that preceded him, he continually glanced right and left, searched the trail ahead with a probing gaze, turned to look over his shoulder. As he neared the bend, his glance concentrated on the black curve of mesquite which walled it in. Abruptly, he stiffened in the saddle, muscles tensed for dynamic action. And at that instant, reddish flame gushed from the dense bristle of growth at the bend. The report of a shot rang like thunder and echoed back and forth from spire to butte. The tall rider of the golden horse, who had been swaying sideways the instant the gun cracked, threw up both hands and pitched from the saddle to lie, apparently a limp and lifeless form, undiscernible in the black shadow that edged the trail. But even as he fell, seemingly helpless, one sinewy hand jerked a heavy Winchester rifle from the saddle boot. As he hit the ground, he shot a low-voiced command to the horse. "Hold it, Goldie!" The yellow horse stood motionless, ears pricked forward inquiringly. His rider lay, apparently where he had fallen. In reality, he had writhed sideways several feet farther into the shadow. For long minutes the tableau held. The golden horse continued to peer towards the bend in the trail. From the shadows beside him came no sound or motion. The horse flicked his tail and pawed questioningly with a front foot. "Steady!" cautioned an almost inaudible whisper from the shadows. "Steady, feller. That dry gulching sidewinder will be coming to see if he did a finish job, or my name's not Jim Hatfield. Steady!" The horse remained motionless, the silence unbroken. The sullen moon climbed higher into the sky. The band of shadow beside the trail narrowed. It was the faint snap of a breaking twig that warned Hatfield of danger from an unexpected quarter. He glanced quickly over his shoulder and saw two shadow forms just emerging from the mesquite behind him. Noiselessly, he writhed about, cuddling the stock of the Winchester against his cheek. The two forms advanced stealthily towards him. He could catch the glint of moonlight on the guns they held. He shifted the muzzle of the rifle to bear directly on the leading figure. But just as his finger began tightening on the trigger, a vagrant beam of moonlight fell full on the face of the leading man, and what he saw so startled Hatfield that for an instant he held his fire. The moonlight, reddish, eerie, beat not upon a human face, but upon a fleshless skull, cavernous eye holes, grinning teeth, noseless cavity. It was a grisly death's head that toppled the tall and broad-shouldered form that advanced with furtive but purposeful step. But if the thing that stole towards him was featureless, it certainly was not voiceless, for at that moment it let out a warning below. "Look out, he ain't dead." Jerked out of his trance of astonishment, Hatfield fired. He saw the death's head reel back, heard his yell of pain that was healthily human. A wild dive sideways, and the two forms vanished in the growth. Hatfield sent a stream of lead hissing after them, and was rewarded by a wild crashing as the pair tore through the mesquite in headlong flight. Hatfield leaped to his feet, scudded along through the shadow, and paused where the smashed branches showed where the pair had taken to cover. He could see nothing, but his ears told him that both of the dry gulches were on their feet and hightailing it away from there. Abruptly, the sound ceased. Hatfield crouched low, rifle at the ready, peering and listening. Another moment of silence. Then to his ear came the sound of fast hoofs fading into the distance. Hatfield debated whether to mount or race in pursuit, but that ominous bend in the trail ahead made him hesitate. He had no way of knowing whether the grim pair he had seen were the whole of the dry gulching pack. If others were holed up beyond the bend, he stood a good chance of leaning against the hot end of a bullet if he rounded it recklessly. On noiseless feet, he turned and stole back the way he had come, keeping in the shadow, careful to avoid the slightest sound. He reached the bend, slipped into the growth, and wormed his way along, stopping every moment or two to peer and listen. The silence remained unbroken save for the chirp of a sleepy bird in the growth ahead. A moment later, the furtive form of a rodent slid across the trail a dozen yards in front and vanished into the mesquite. That feller wouldn't have gone in there if anybody was holed up in the brush, Hatfield told himself. He straightened up and stepped boldly onto the moonlit trail. Nothing happened. Mechanically, he refilled the magazine of his rifle with fresh cartridges. For a moment, he stood staring eastward. The same thing saved him that saved me a minute before, moonlight glinting on my rifle barrel when I shifted it, he mused, apropos of the vanished dry gulcher. If I hadn't seen that mite of a gleam at the edge of the brush ahead, he'd have drilled me dead center. Came mighty close, it was. I felt the wind of the slug as it went past. Well, this is a nice reception for a gent riding into a section peaceable like. What sort of a jigger was that I lined sights with anyhow? Looked like something that had just climbed out of a grave after spending a long time there. Captain McDowell wrote me funny things were happening hereabouts and would stand a little ranger investigating, but it looks like he doesn't know the half of it. Looks like I might be in for a sort of interesting time. Most folks might reason that what had just occurred was a mite too interesting for comfort, but there was a pleased expression in the long green eyes of a man grim old lieutenant of Rangers had named the Lone Wolf. And that concludes Chapter 1 of The Death Riders. And just right off the bat, guys, kind of interesting, kind of intense, and I'm already intrigued and know that I'm going to finish this. I had never read any of that before. I know I messed up a little bit of it, but I just wanted to give you guys a peek into an old vintage book, something that was very popular back in the day, old Western paperbacks. And this is something that I'm just coming to discover, and I think this is really cool. I hope you guys did too. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care, guys.